Hello, my name is Brian Burnham. This is Module 1 self-introduction video for AEP 880, Cultural Diversity. Those of you that have been in classes with me prior to this one, I do all my videos in our coach's office typically, so you're going to see different football stuff up behind me. I apologize in advance. If you want to learn a little football, take a look. Zach, if I saw your video, if you want to take something from us, steal it. We're not doing anything any different that y'all are doing, I'm sure. But this is all offensive stuff behind me, so you probably don't even really need to look at that anyways. Who cares about offense? I was born in Kansas, actually right outside of Wichita, wherever Newton's at, somewhere down in here. I've got family in Beloit, and then my dad is from on my mom's side, and then my dad's family was up here in the northwest corner in a little town called St. Francis. I lived in Colorado right outside of Denver and for 2.5 years, and then we lived in Texas for about 7 months while my mom got some final training for her job, and then we moved to Tennessee in 1989, and I've lived here ever since. My background is in special education, mild to moderate. I graduated in class of 2003 from MTSU, Middle Tennessee State University. I also have my certification in driver's ed, which I'm currently teaching. Actually, I drove today from 10 to 4 with my students. Hopefully I get done with that in about a week or so. And then I'm also qualified to teach personal finance. I will be going into my 18th year teaching. My 4 schools that I've taught at are listed there. 1 semester at community elementary. I'll probably never teach elementary again. And then the next 17 in 3 high schools, Blackman, Siegel, and now currently at Summit. We were fortunate enough to win the state championship last year, so that's a picture of this right here. Gold ball sitting at our coach's wife's house the night of the championship. That was actually my 40th birthday as well, so that was a pretty cool birthday present. And then my nieces and nephews, or nephew, this is Kennedy Everest. He was born premature and climbed a mountain just to survive, so they named him Everest. Rosie, his sister, and then Kennedy's sister, Harper. The 2 outside girls are my brother's kids, and then the 2 inside are my sisters. I teach at Summit High School, which last year had an enrollment of 1,620 students. That will be up over 1,700, maybe close to 1,750 in the fall. It's not very diverse, 83% white, 8% Hispanic, 4% African American, and then 5% make up the other races made up of Asian, Indians, and Native American. We have an 18.5 student to teacher ratio. 12.5% free and reduced lunch, which is not that high, I recognize. We actually live in a very affluent area. And then we're ranked 25th out of 342 Tennessee high schools. 3 or 4 years ago, I think this data came from, but I believe we're in the top 20. I think we were 18th. They just haven't officially released it. We were told that not too long ago, so I think we're up to 18th. This is a picture of our home facility. Our coach takes a lot of pride in the grass. It's nice. You know, we're very happy with it. Ethnic background on my mom's side, the only information that we have is 66% of our heritage on her side is Germanic European, 34%, and then 32% are English and Northwestern European, specifically 14% Irish, 12% Scottish, and 6% Swedish. I've broken those up. This is Germanic European in the green, and then this is the Northwestern and English European. And then I've got them broken down specifically into Ireland, Scotland, and Sweden. On my dad's side, we were German and Prussian on his grandfather's side, and then English and Scottish on his grandmother's. My dad's mom's maiden name was Burnett. The Burnett clan was originally went by the name Barnard. They were given title to their land in Scotland by King Robert the Bruce in 1323. If you've seen the movie Braveheart, he was the one that was dressed in all black that betrayed William Wallace out there on the battlefield. The land that was given to them by King Robert the Bruce, they built Craith's Castle, which is pictured there on the left. My parents visited there 5 years ago when they took a trip to Scotland and Ireland. From a kind of a cultural and heritage background, you know, continuing it on my mom's side, you know, the Germanic individuals that were in their family, the immigrants that came over that had German and Russian descent. Uh, the area that they settled into in the Midwestern Plains is very similar to the Volga region over there in Germany, Russia area. And one of the crops that they grew was hard red winter wheat. And so they knew how to cultivate it, they knew how to farm it, they knew how to make money at it. And so basically they brought it over here. And honestly, it's one of Kansas's chief crops even today. You can go over there. I've got an uncle that works, honestly, yeah, he works 10,000 acres of wheat in their farm out in western Kansas. So if my mom's family's cooking, chances are we're going to be eating something along the lines of beer, brats, sauerkraut, some other form of cabbage. It's not always like that because there are other delicacies that they cook. Cabbage is not my favorite, but when family's together, you know, you kind of do what's best for the family. So I choke it down. Discussing the resources, the first one was an Edutopia article that provided a quick overview on how to most effectively engage students from diverse backgrounds. The key to all communication is communication itself. I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, but you have to communicate and be open to different lines of communication to get your point across and to convey information. There were a number of other resources linked within this article. Each link gave a brief description and overview of what's contained within each source. Also gives the description on how to use it to connect with families. I thought this was a great thing, not only for us as educators and potential building leaders, but also the things that we could share with parents and ways that we could connect and find common ground amongst each other to communicate with, you know, information that whether it needs to be in another language or, you know, different avenues, whatever it needs to be. I thought this was a great way to start the module. Cultural diversity, the sum of our parts. This was a TED Talk presented by Hilda Mwangi. Says that her, you know, first impressions are what most people use to view the people they meet. These get in the way of us learning more about each other because we're making a snap judgment based on a 10 or 15 second introduction. Hilda Mwangi herself says that we're all jigsaw puzzles that are made up of different pieces from our, you know, different aspects and avenues of our lives, our experiences, our identity, which is our heritage and culture, the choices that we make, the friendship circle we keep, the food we eat, the activities we do, and then the policy is our voice, using it to speak about your experiences. All of these things together create who we are and what we choose to be. It's past time to appreciate cultural diversity. This was also a TED Talk presented by Haley Yates. She was a Korean-born but adopted infant to an Australian family. I think she said she was 5 months old when she was adopted. She appears Asian physically, but identifies completely as Australian. Her accent is Australian. The only thing that doesn't match is her skin tone and her facial features. Says it, you know, it changed the way that she approached classes in college because she was always thought to be one thing because she looks a certain way, but then is somebody completely different. She always felt the need to over-prepare in hopes of being included in group projects. That can be very stressful and a tough thing to do. The overall message was for corporations to put forth the same effort towards cultural diversity that they've started putting towards gender diversity. We have made huge strides in gender diversity, and her whole thing was, let's continue to do that same thing for cultural diversity. The challenges of cultural diversity. This resource would not open on my computer. I have to be completely honest. So I actually had to look at a couple of my other classmates who turned their assignments in early to kind of see what was in this resource. It was, from what I gathered, a discussion between explicit racism and implicit racism. There were also some prejudices and terms that were given: xenophobia, ethnocentrism, and racism. Things that I was actually familiar with from other classes and just my upbringing. But it was kind of cool to see that they're putting those pieces of information out there and giving us a specific definition to look at and know about either ourselves or people that we're in contact with, and maybe we can help attack the problem, you know, as educators moving forward. And then engaging diverse communities. This was an anonymous ProQuest article from the Planning Advisory Service Report in January 2019. This resource was a discussion of what civil planners try and do when they are focusing on changes to an area. It talked about what steps they can take to engage the community and gather information from the diverse families that make it up. A good planner will come in and provide feeling of ownership to diverse cultures within a community to ensure that all religious and cultural backgrounds are considered before major changes occur. If they're going to have some sort of civic event or a public celebration, they want to make sure that they're not doing those things, during Rosh Hashanah or Kwanzaa or anything like that. And those are just the ones off the top of my head, but things like that. All very important, parts of the process. Plus, when you take those things into consideration, it allows the members of the community to feel like they're included and can even have some ownership if they're involved in the discussion. The thing that jumped out at me the most was the 5 categories of public participation spectrum. And those words were inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower. It's basically what those civic planners will go through to make sure, if they're doing a good job, to make sure that families feel that ownership that I was just talking about. And I felt like, as a future administrator, these are the types of things that we can do, even as educators now, within our classrooms. I feel like we probably all do this for the most part, but it's nice to see them in written form and see them in a list so that you've got them and you can check them off. And then the final thing was a checklist that they provided that kind of ensures that civil planners, we as teachers within a school, and or politicians in an area are using to include everyone in major decisions that are made that are within that said community. Observations that I've noticed, recurring themes: communication is the key to all participatory involvement, allowing families to feel ownership of the process, whatever it may be. Don't judge someone off of features that they have no control over, like skin color or cultural upbringing. Most of us are taught this at an early age. How we choose to synthesize the lesson and apply it to our own daily lives is up to us, however. And being prepared to offer multiple forms of communication, engagement, resource material, and or services like childcare or something like that to ensure the largest turnout or success rate when we are doing a gathering or doing something with the community. And then the knowledge gained from this assignment, as I talked about, those 5 categories of participation spectrum. I did have an idea of this process, but seeing it put into practice was great, and having it written into a list was awesome. The correlation of CLO 3.1 has allowed us to demonstrate the learned ability to evaluate the provided resources, synthesize information, and demonstrate our ability to be culturally sensitive, both within our classrooms and in our personal lives. Supportive environments encourage participation, provides a feeling of safety, trust, joy, and ownership. All things that we as educators and future building administrators want in our buildings and classrooms. These resources and the assignments we were given allow us to do these things mentioned above, in my opinion, become better educators and future building administrators. The relevancy of this module and assignment are obvious. Given the current cultural climate of the world that we live in, it is apparent that all the information, suggestions, practices, and expectations laid out within this assignment and these resources are relevant and may be more important than ever. Everyone has a backstory, everyone has a unique perspective, and everyone deserves the opportunity to showcase skills they possess, whether it be in the job setting, in the classroom, or in our day-to-day lives within our communities. Inclusion of individuals with special needs or the special education community was a big deal about 15 or 20 years ago. There was a big push to make sure that took place, and we're at a good place right now. Obviously, more work to do. That same type of push should be done to have an open mind and needs to be applied to cultural awareness as well. Personal reflection: diversity has been something that I've had around me my whole life. I haven't lived in extremely diverse areas, but when we lived in Dallas, I was in a heavily Hispanic population. And then once I moved here to Tennessee, I've had a lot of cultural diversity through friends in high school, college acquaintances and friends, and the 4 different placements that I've had the pleasure of teaching in my career. I've taught students from multiple Asian countries. I've had friends from Saudi Arabia and Kenya and Australia. I've taught foreign exchange students. I've just lived a very broad experience, in my opinion. Not as broad as some, and probably have lots to learn, but I do feel blessed to have been in the areas and experienced and met the people that I've met up to this point. I thought this was a great first module for this class. Thanks for your attention. Here are my resources. You can pause it and take a look at those. Thanks, guys. I look forward to working with everybody.